Hello students, I am Dr. Harshit Srivastava. Today I am going to discuss about demand analysis. Contents are demand, demand function, law of demand, factors influencing demand, derivation of demand curve, and lastly the movement along the same demand curve and shift in demand. Meaning of demand. What is demand? Demand refers to various quantities of a commodity which a consumer is able and willing to buy at different price levels. Now there are four elements. Number one is various quantities. Number two is ability of consumer to buy that product, that is his purchasing power. Number third is willingness to buy or desire. And lastly, different price level. If any of these elements are missing, we will not count that in meaning of demand. So demand is various quantities of a commodity which a consumer is able and willing to buy at different price levels. Now, what is quantity demanded? Now, quantity demanded is the specific quantity of a commodity which a consumer is able and willing to buy at a specific price level. Now, what is difference between the demand and quantity demanded? Now, quantity demanded tells the specific quantity of a commodity which a consumer is able and willing to buy at a specific price. In demand, we have various quantities. In quantity demanded, we have a specific quantity. And now in quantity demand, we have a specific price level. If we are taking the demand of an individual consumer, that will be counted under individual demand. However, if there are few consumers in market, for example, consumer number A, B and C, then that will be considered as market demand. If we are analyzing the demand pattern of A, B and C, taking a combination of their quantity demanded. Next is demand schedule. If we are making the comparison or we are analyzing the price, different price level and the quantity, that will come under demand schedule. If we present that analysis in form of schedule, that is known as demand schedule. Now, what demand schedule represent is different price level and quantity demanded at those price level. For example, if price is 1, then quantity demanded may be 20. If price is increased to 2, then quantity demanded may decrease by 2 and it will become 18 and accordingly. Now next thing is demand curve. Now demand curve is downward sloping curve which represent that there exists an inverse relation between price and quantity demanded. As price increases, the quantity demanded decreases and vice versa. Now, demand function. What is demand function? Demand function shows the functional relation between the quantity demanded and factors influencing it. We are taking quantity demanded as dependent variable on number of factors including price of a product, income of consumer, price of related good, taste and preferences, price expected future prices and total number of consumers. These are few factors. However, there may be many factors affecting the demand or quantity demand of that commodity. Now, the mathematical representation, if we show the mathematical representation, it can be written as quantity demand QD is equal to A minus BP, CM, DE, DPR, ET and accordingly, where B, C, D, E and F are slope parameters. Now what is slope? Slope represents the change. Now what is change? That is change in quantity demanded divided by change in consumer's income. Or slope of, what is slope of B? Slope of B is change in quantity demanded divided by change in price level. What is slope of C? Change in quantity demanded divided by change in consumer's income. And A is intercept, which is unaffected or independent of these factors. factors. Now we are going to discuss about the factors influencing demand or the factors affecting demand, in which the first is price of a product. Ceteris paribus, there exists an inverse relation between price of a product and its quantity demanded. That is, when price of a commodity increases, its quantity demanded goes down. This is law of demand. It is universal in nature, somehow more related to universality. It generally exists, however there are few exemptions also. For example, of Veblen goods, Giffen goods, these are few exceptions, but in general this law applies. That is, when prices increase, the quantity demanded decreases. When price decreases, then quantity demanded increase. Now, second factors influencing demand is, or quantity demand is, income of the consumer. Generally, when income of consumer increases, he tends to buy more quantities of a commodity. On the basis of this income demand relationship, we can classify our goods in two parts. Number one is normal goods, number two is inferior goods. Normal goods are those goods which are having direct relation or positive relation with income. That is, when income of a consumer increases, he tends to buy more quantities of normal good. For example, any commodity which consumer is increasing his quantity because of increase in his income, that will come under normal goods. Now, inferior goods are those goods which are having negative relation with the increase in income, meaning they are those goods by discontinue or decreases his consumption by increases in income. For example, shoe repair. When income of consumer is less, he is opting for shoe repair services. Now, when income of a consumer increases, then he discontinues the practice of shoe repair and he tends to buy new shoes. So this is inferior commodity. Now next is price of related goods. This is the third factor influencing demand. Now, goods are related in two ways. Number one is substitute goods and number two is complementary goods. Substitute goods are those goods which are used in place of each other. They are the alternatives. For example, traveling in metro, traveling by auto. These are two substitutes. When price of substitute good increases, for example, when price of metro increases, then demand, the quantity demanded of the person traveling in auto will increase. That is, when price of substitute good increases, then quantity demanded of our commodity increase accordingly. So there exists a positive and a direct relation between the price of substitute goods and quantity demanded of our initial goods. Now, second is complementary goods. Complementary goods are used together. For example, pen and ink, bike and petrol, table and chair. These are used together, generally together. Now, when price of complementary goods increases, then the quantity demanded of our commodity, initial commodity, tends to decrease because they are used together. So there exists an inverse relation between the price of complementary goods and the quantity demand of our initial goods. Now next is taste pattern. Now quantity demanded is positively associated with positive taste. If consumer is having positive taste of any commodity, the quantity demand will increase. So we can say there exists a direct relation between the positive taste and inverse relation between the quantity demanded and the negative taste. Now next is price expectation. This is very important factor. If prices are expected to rise in future, near future, the present quantity demand will increase. However, if price fall is expected in near future, then present quantity demand will decrease. So there exists a direct relation between the price rise, expected price rise, and the present quantity demanded. Now last factor is the total number of consumers in market. Keeping other things constant, if total number of consumers in market increases, automatically the quantity demanded also increase. So these are the few factors which influence demand. I am not saying that these are the only factors influencing demand, but these are the major factors which influences the demand. Now we can derive demand curve from demand function too. Suppose a demand function is given, quantity demand is equal to 1000 minus 50p plus 1m minus 2pr. Now this 50p, 1m and 2pr, 50, 1 and 2, these are slope parameters. Now if income of consumer is 2000 and price of related is 100, we can derive demand function, and we will derive to demand function, that is QD is equal to 2800 minus 50p. Now we can also present this mathematical demand function in form of schedule, which is known as demand schedule. Now next is the movement along the same demand curve and shift in demand. Now first we will discuss movement along the same demand curve. What is movement along the same demand curve? Movement along the same demand curve, the basic cause of movement along the same demand curve is the change in price only. That is, when price of a commodity increases or decreases, then quantity demanded will decrease or increase accordingly. That is, when price of a commodity increases, then its quantity demanded decreases, and when this happens, then consumer tend to increase. That is, when there is price increase, then consumer move upward in demand curve. Vice versa to it, or on contrary to it, when the price of a commodity decreases, then there is downward movement along the same demand curve. So there is upward and downward movement in demand curve because of change in price only. If other factors are changing, that will come under the part of shift in demand. Now what is shift in demand? Shift in demand is caused by the factors other than price. That may be income of consumer, price of related goods, any other thing, any other factor related to demand. Now keeping the price constant, if other factors increases, for example if consumers income increases, then demand curve will shift to right. However, on contrary to it, when consumers income decreases, then he will tend to decrease his demand, and the demand curve will shift leftward. So increase and decrease in demand is caused by other factors. However, the movement along the same demand curve is caused by changes in prices. So we have discussed demand, its meaning, quantity demanded, demand schedule, demand curve. Then we have discussed about demand function, then law of demand, and then factors influencing demand, in which we found that the relationship with price is inverse in nature. That is, when price increases, then quantity demanded decreases. However, the relation with consumer income is positive for normal goods and negative for inferior goods. Similarly, in price of related goods, there is positive relation in price of substitute goods and quantity demanded. However, for complementary goods, that relation is inverse in nature. And for price expectation, there is a positive relation if future rise in price is expected. So these are few factors influencing demand. So this ends to our, lastly we discussed about the movement along the same demand curve and increase and decrease in demand, that is shift in demand. So this ends our discussion. Thank you so much.